Parents, I'm about to share something with you that Donald Winnicott discovered that will completely change how you understand your child's behavior. He found that children, even very young ones, can develop what he called a false self as a way to survive emotionally when their true self doesn't feel safe or accepted. And here's what's really important. This false self isn't just a phase or a personality quirk. It's actually a protective mechanism that can have serious consequences for your child's emotional health if it goes unnoticed. Let me start by explaining what Winnicott meant by the true self versus the false self. Your child's true self is who they really are at their core. It's their authentic personality, their genuine feelings, their natural curiosity, their real interests, and their spontaneous reactions to the world. The true self is creative, alive, and sometimes messy. It's the part of your child that feels real and authentic. The false self, on the other hand, is like a mask that your child creates to protect their true self when they don't feel safe being who they really are. It's a compliant, people-pleasing version of themselves that they present to the world because they've learned that their true self isn't acceptable or safe to show. The false self is always trying to figure out what others want and then becoming that, rather than being authentic. Now, here's what makes this so concerning. When a child develops a strong false self, they lose touch with who they really are. They become so focused on being what they think others want that they forget what they actually want, feel, or need. They become performers in their own lives, and while they might look like they're doing well on the outside, inside they feel empty and disconnected. Winnicott discovered that the false self develops when a child's environment consistently fails to respond to their true self. This happens when parents, often without realizing it, only give positive attention to certain behaviors while ignoring or rejecting other parts of their child's personality. The child learns that parts of who they are aren't acceptable, so they hide those parts and create a version of themselves that gets approval. Let me give you some examples of what this looks like in real life. Picture a naturally energetic and loud 5-year-old boy whose parents are constantly telling him to calm down, be quiet, and stop being so wild. Over time, he might develop a false self that's very subdued and controlled because he's learned that his natural energy isn't welcome. He becomes the good boy who sits still and speaks softly, but inside he's disconnected from his natural vitality. Or consider a sensitive 4-year-old girl who cries easily and feels things deeply. If her parents consistently tell her to stop crying, to be strong, or that she's being too dramatic, she might develop a false self that's always happy and cheerful. She learns to smile and say she's fine even when she's hurting inside because she's learned that her genuine emotions aren't acceptable. Here's another common scenario. A creative and imaginative child who loves to draw and tell stories might develop a false self focused on academic achievement if their parents only show excitement about grades and test scores. They learn that their creativity isn't valued as much as their performance, so they push down their artistic side and become someone who's always focused on being the best student. Now, you might be thinking, but isn't it good for children to learn to behave appropriately and to develop self-control? And you're absolutely right. Winnicott wasn't saying that children should never learn boundaries or social skills. The difference is in how these things are taught and whether the child's core self is still accepted and valued. A healthy child learns to manage their energy in certain situations while still feeling accepted for being naturally energetic. An emotionally healthy child learns when it's appropriate to express big feelings while still feeling loved for being sensitive. A well-adjusted child learns to value academic success while still feeling proud of their creativity. The key is that their true self remains intact and valued. But when a child develops a false self, they're not just learning to manage their behavior. They're learning to hide who they really are because they don't feel safe being authentic. They're sacrificing their true self for approval and acceptance. And this creates deep emotional problems that can last into adulthood. So, how can you tell if your child is developing a false self? Here are some signs that Winnicott identified that you should watch for. First, excessive compliance. If your child is always trying to be perfect, never argues or pushes back, and seems to have no opinions of their own, this might be a sign that they're hiding their true self. Healthy children have moments of defiance and disagreement. They test boundaries and express their own preferences. A child who never does this might be suppressing their authentic voice. Second, look for a lack of spontaneity. Children are naturally spontaneous and unpredictable. If your child seems to always be calculating their responses or asking what you want them to do instead of following their own instincts, this could be a sign of false self-development. They might seem mature beyond their years, but in a way that feels forced rather than natural. Third, watch for emotional flatness. Children have big, varied emotions. If your child seems to only have a narrow range of acceptable emotions, always happy or always calm, they might be suppressing parts of their emotional life. This is especially concerning if you remember them being more emotionally expressive when they were younger. Fourth, notice if your child seems to have no real interests or preferences of their own. A child with a developing false self might always say they like whatever you like or want whatever you want. When you ask them what they want to do, they might always defer to you or seem genuinely unsure. This happens because they've become so focused on pleasing others that they've lost touch with their own desires. Fifth, pay attention to perfectionism. While it's normal for children to want to do well, excessive perfectionism can be a sign of false self-development. If your child becomes extremely distressed by mistakes, refuses to try new things because they might not be perfect at them, or seems to think they're only valuable when they're achieving, this might be their false self trying to earn love through performance. Another sign is what Winnicott called precocious maturity. This is when a child seems wise beyond their years, but not in a healthy way. They might take care of everyone else's emotions, never have needs of their own, or seem to have skipped childhood entirely. While this might look impressive, it's actually a sign that the child doesn't feel safe being a child. Here's something really important to understand. The false self isn't your child's fault, and it's not necessarily your fault either. It develops as a survival mechanism when a child feels that their true self isn't safe or welcome. Sometimes this happens because of obvious rejection or criticism, but it can also happen in subtle ways that well-meaning parents don't even realize. For example, if you consistently get more excited about your child's achievements than about who they are as a person, they might learn that their worth depends on their performance. If you have trouble tolerating certain emotions like anger or sadness, your child might learn to hide these feelings. If you're going through a difficult time and your child senses that you need them to be easy and undemanding, they might develop a false self that's always accommodating. The good news is that the false self can be healed, especially if you catch it early. The key is to create an environment where your child's true self feels safe to emerge. This means accepting and loving all parts of your child, not just the parts that are easy or convenient for you. Start by paying attention to moments when your child shows you their authentic self. Maybe they're being silly, or expressing a strong opinion, or showing you something they're passionate about. These are precious moments when their true self is visible. Respond to these moments with genuine interest and acceptance, even if their authentic self is different from what you expected or wanted. If your child is angry, instead of immediately trying to shut down the anger, try to understand what's underneath it. If they're sad, resist the urge to cheer them up right away. Instead, let them know that all of their feelings are welcome and acceptable. This doesn't mean you accept all behaviors, but you accept all emotions as valid parts of who they are. Also, be careful about only praising your child for achievements or good behavior. Make sure you're also expressing love and appreciation for who they are as a person. Tell them you love their sense of humor, their creativity, their kindness, or their unique way of seeing the world. Help them understand that they're valuable not because of what they do, but because of who they are. Encourage your child to express their preferences and opinions. Ask them what they think about things, what they like and don't like, what they're interested in. If they always defer you, gently encourage them to think about what they actually want. You might say something like, "I know you want to make me happy, but I really want to know what you think." It's also important to model authenticity yourself. Let your child see that you have different emotions, that you make mistakes, and that you're not perfect. If you're always presenting a perfect version of yourself, your child might think that's what's expected of them too. Show them that it's safe to be human and imperfect. Here's something that might surprise you. Sometimes the false self can look like a very successful, well-behaved child. They might get good grades, follow all the rules, and never cause problems. While these things aren't bad in themselves, if they're coming from a place of fear rather than authentic motivation, they can be signs of false self-development. The goal isn't to have a child who never behaves well or never tries to please you. The goal is to have a child who can choose to behave well while still feeling safe to be authentic. They should be able to have bad days, express difficult emotions, and show you parts of their personality that aren't always convenient or easy. If you're recognizing signs of false self-development in your child, don't panic. This is something that can be addressed with patience, understanding, and consistent acceptance of your child's authentic self. The earlier you catch it, the easier. It is to help your child reconnect with who they really are. Remember, your child's true self is a gift. It's unique, valuable, and deserving of love and acceptance. When you protect and nurture their authentic self, you're giving them the foundation for a lifetime of emotional health and genuine relationships. You're teaching them that they're worthy of love not because of what they do, but because of who they are. As we wrap up, I want you to think about this. What parts of your child's personality do you celebrate? And what parts do you try to change or minimize? Are there aspects of their true self that you might be unconsciously discouraging? The answers to these questions can help you understand whether your child feels safe being authentic with you. Your child's true self is depending on you to create a safe space for it to flourish. When you notice the signs of false self-development early and respond with acceptance and love, you're giving your child the most important gift you can give them, the freedom to be genuinely themselves.